All right, moving forward with Chapter 8, solving linear equations, we have moved into Lesson 4, so we are moving past basic one-step and two-step equations, and we're starting to use some distributive properties. So we've got some brackets involved, and we're going to have some coefficient, or maybe a couple terms being divided by something. So I'm going to show you a couple different strategies. You're going to have to start to recognize which strategy is more useful for what type of equation, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you the distributive property method, and then I'm going to show you a second method, and kind of depending on the question or depending on what you feel most comfortable with, you are going to try using one of these methods, okay? So first we're going to use distributive property. So distributive property says that if you have a coefficient outside of a bracket like the 3, it must be multiplied or it must be distributed to every term within the bracket. So that means we're going to go 3 times d, and we're going to go 3 times 0.4. Okay, if there was a third term, we would multiply it to the third term inside the bracket. So there's 2 terms, so we multiply it twice. Once the bracket closes, the distributive property stops. So we're not going to go 3 times the negative 0.39 because it's not inside the bracket. So it doesn't distribute across the equal sign or outside of the bracket. So when we multiply, we end up with 3d, or 3 times d, plus 1.2 equals negative 3.9. Oh, there. Okay, so then carrying on with solving, working backwards through BEDMAS, I'm going to minus 1.2 from both sides. Whatever I do on one side, I'm going to do the same on the other. So we end up with 3d equals negative 5.1. Right? This is like you owe me and then you owe me again, or it dropped 3.9 and then it dropped another 1.2, so it's going to become more negative. And then to undo times by 3, we're going to divide both sides by 3. And we get d is equal to negative 1.7. Okay, and then we could substitute that to check. So we could go 3 times negative 1.7 plus 0.4 should equal to negative 3.9. Solve inside our brackets first. 3 times negative 1.3 should equal negative 3.9. Now we can multiply negative 3.9. So we get the same on both sides, so our check works. So our solution of negative 1.7 is correct. So that's using distributive property when we are multiplying. Okay, but what about if we have to do some dividing with a distributive property? So right now we have 2 terms being divided by 3. So the c is being divided by 3 and the positive 2 is being divided by 3. So I'm going to distribute or split up the divide by 3. Okay? And so now if this is the case, now we can start solving this like some of the ones we were dealing with in the second and third lesson. So to isolate, I'm going to have some common denominators here, so I'm going to actually turn everything into a denominator of 6. So x by 2, x by 2, times by 2, times by 3, times by 3. So now we have all these denominators of 6. So then we get 2c plus 4 over 6 is equal to negative 15 over 6. Okay? I'm going to get rid of this by subtracting. So 2c over 6 is equal to negative 19 over 6. Remember, you went to that work to make the common denominator, so then you're going to keep them. And then I actually didn't need to make, I guess, the 2c over 6, but that's fine. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal to cancel out the 2/6. And whatever I do on one side, I'm going to do the other. So 2 divided by 2 cancels out to 1, and 6 divided by 6 cancels out to 1. So I'm left with 1c is equal to, well, times by 6, divide by 6. These two are actually going to cancel, so I'm going to get negative 19 over 2. If you multiplied them, you would get negative 57 over 6, but this is in simplified form, so then we could either go to negative 9.5 if we divide them, or negative 9.5. Okay? The decimal terminates, so we can show it as a decimal or fraction form, and then we could substitute back to check. We're not going to substitute this one. So that's using distributive property method. However, there's another option. So when you have something being multiplied, we can always divide to undo it or remove it. So we don't necessarily have to distribute. Sometimes it's going to make more sense. Sometimes it's not going to make more sense. So you really have to start getting to be able to differentiate between when you should distribute and when you shouldn't. These are the exact same examples as in the first. So we know what answers we're trying to get. We're trying to get negative 1.7 and we're trying to get negative 9.5. But I'm going to show you a different way of doing this that you may or may not like better. Again, it's a preferential thing, but there will be some instances where one method is substantially easier than the other. So this is like 3 times d plus 0.4. Okay, so rather than distributing, I'm going to divide by 3. If it's being multiplied by 3, we're going to divide by 3 so that they cancel out. So 3 divided by 3 is going to divide to just give us 1 times d plus 0.4 equals negative 1.3. So now we have no more brackets, we have no more coefficient. D is pretty much by itself. All we have to do is get rid of the plus 0.4. So d plus 0 equals negative 1.7. Same as what we got the first time around. So that's nice and easy. And that's it. Solved. Done. Way less work than distributive property. Looking at the second one. I'm going to get rid of all of these fractions to start with because ain't nobody got time for all these fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 times 3 because those are my two denominators. Okay? And so timesing by 3 and dividing by 3, so these are like over 1 like that. So these 3's are going to cancel out. So I get left with 2 times c plus 2 over 1. And on the other side, these 2's are going to cancel out, and I get negative 5 times 3. No more fractions. I do have a coefficient now that I need to distribute, but fractions are gone. And fractions are usually the thing that give you guys the most headache. So now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to go 2 times c and 2 times 2. So we get 2c plus 4 equals negative 15. I just multiplied those two. Continuing to solve. I'm going to get rid of the constant. Minus 4 minus 4. 2c equals negative 19. Divide by 2. C equals negative 9.5. And that's the same thing that we got above. So we're good. Okay? So I prefer this second method. Again, it's just a personal thing. You figure out what method works for you. And so where you're going to practice this now is on these 3 questions. So A and B and C. I am not solving these for you because I'm not going to show both methods. It's going to take a lot of time. I will have them up on the board for you in the next class so you can double check your work. But I am going to give you the solutions now. So that way you at least know if you are on the right track. Okay? Again, you could use check as well to check your solutions. So for letter A, your solution should be Q equals to 2.5, okay, or 2.5 if you keep it in fraction form. For letter B, you should get E equals 2.7. And for letter C, you should get X equals negative 1/10 or negative 0.1 or 0.10. Okay, so those are your solutions. Look at that, only 10:06 on the video. That's pretty good. We are going to check A, B, and C together in class tomorrow, so please make sure that you have at least attempted them. I don't mind if you use method 1 or method 2, as long as you demonstrate your process.